Hi everyone, welcome to the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program's online video tutorial series. This video tutorial has been prepared to provide information on some of the key changes that were implemented in the single window system for the 2021 greenhouse gas reporting cycle. I will explain these changes by giving a short demonstration on where these changes were made in the system. If you have any questions, please feel free to email or call the GHGRP program. Our contact information is located in the description box below. So let's get started. So once you are logged into the ECCC and Partners GHG reporting module in single window, the first change that you will encounter will be visible to all facility reporters. When navigating to section A of the report, a pop-up dialog box will appear on the screen asking you if you would like to load activity emissions into sections A, B, and C. Selecting yes will load the activity emissions data previously entered into sections A, B, and C. Please note that loading activity emissions into sections A, B, and C is only applicable if you have selected an activity in the facility activity screen and if you did not upload a provincial report. This means that if no activities were selected on the facility activity screen, or if a provincial report was provided, please select no. This will lead you to the same reporting process that you would have seen in the past. If an activity was selected on the facility activity screen and no provincial report was provided, selecting yes on this pop-up dialog box will automatically load all the emissions and methods from the expanded screens to sections A, B, and C of the report. So for example, I'll go to another test facility and I'm going to click on the edit icon. And as you can see from the facility activity screen, I already have some activities selected. I did not upload a provincial report. And I have some test data in the activity screens. And then I'm going to navigate to section A of the report. And again, all the emissions and methods that were entered in the activity screens of the report will be loaded automatically to section A, B, and C once you select yes to the pop-up dialog box that appears in section A that asks if you would like to load activity emissions into sections A, B, and C. So in addition, in sections A, B, and C of the report, you will find a new input for methods called QR, which represents Canada's greenhouse gas quantification requirements. This method is selected if you use the methods prescribed in the quantification requirements document to calculate the associated emissions. For facilities subject to the expanded reporting requirements, you will note that once you load activity emissions into sections A, B, and C of the report, this method will be selected by default since it is a requirement for these facilities. So here's an example of that. So furthermore, a mandatory question is present at the bottom of sections A, B, and C respectively that asks whether or not the emissions reported on this screen match those reported on the facility activity screen. So for example, if you filled in emissions in the activity screens and then populated sections A, B, and C, and there were no changes between the activity screens and the general screens, then the emissions should match, and you can select yes to this question. If there was a reason to add or change anything on these screens, so for example, if I add extra emissions on this screen, then the activity screens will not match to the general screens of the report, and you will select no to this question. If you select no, you will need to explain why this is not the case. Agreement between activity screens and sections A, B, and C is a check that our program does on the data. The comments here will allow us to identify reasons for these emissions not being in agreement so that we do not have to follow up with the facility. So therefore, if the emissions do not match, please provide a thorough description of why this is the case. Please note that if no activities were selected on the facility activity screen, or if a provincial report was uploaded, select yes. In either of these cases, no input is required in the comments box. Now let's go over some of the changes that target facilities in specific industry sectors. For facilities reporting information on cement production or lime production, there are new changes that you should be aware of. So I'm just going to click on the cement production screen on the left-hand menu. And inside the cement production screen, for clinker production, organic carbon oxidation, and cement kiln dust, if a method is selected other than SIMS, emissions will be calculated automatically based on your inputs to these sections when validate or save continue is selected. So for example, if I select a method that is not SIMS, in the organic carbon oxidation section, then the process emissions will be calculated automatically based on my inputs for this section after validate or save continue is clicked. Please note that if you input associated emissions to these sections manually and a method other than SIMS is selected, it will overwrite and clear your input as again, the associated emissions will be calculated automatically based on your inputs in these sections. So here's a quick example. I select a method that's not SIMS and I input 1 as an example. You'll see that my input will be cleared and not recorded, as again the emissions will be calculated automatically based on my inputs to this section. So this same functionality exists in the lime production screen. So I'll go to the lime manufacturing screen on the left-hand menu. So this means that if a method is selected other than SIMS, then your lime production emissions will be calculated automatically based on your inputs in line details by type and calcined byproduct waste by type. So an example of this is shown. And again, if you input associated emissions to these sections manually, and a method other than SIMS is selected, it will overwrite and clear your input, as again, the associated emissions will be calculated automatically. So here's an example. I try to input 1, I then validate, and my input is overwritten, since again it's calculated automatically based on my inputs to these sections. The next change that we wanted to mention was for ammonia production. So I'll just navigate to the ammonia production screen. So for the change on this screen, an additional data field has been added to clarify other uses of CO2 recovered or captured. So you will now see a other CO2 recovered or captured section, and this can be used to record the annual quantity and purpose. There is one more change that is specific for facilities reporting coke oven battery emissions, which is related to reporting iron and steel production information. So let's go to the iron and steel production screen. I'm just going to click on this in the left-hand menu. So for coke oven battery emissions, if the information to quantify and report CO2 emissions is available, these emissions should be reported under the fuel combustion screen. Please note that the remaining information is still required on the iron and steel production screen, but for CO2 emissions, you must select reported under fuel combustion, enter 0 as a method, and then enter a value of 0 for CO2 emissions in the iron and steel production screen. This ensures that these emissions are not double counted. If CO2 is entered on this screen, please do not enter CO2 for coke oven gas on the fuel combustion screen. So for example, if I enter CO2 for coke oven battery emissions in the iron and steel production screen, I'm just going to enter some emissions as an example. Then click on Save Continue. And then I'm going to navigate to the fuel combustion screen. So in the fuel combustion screen, for my coke oven gas fuel, I will select NA for CO2 emissions associated with coke oven gas and only enter CH4 and N2O emissions. So this concludes our tutorial to cover the changes in single window in order to make you aware of these changes and to assist you with preparing your GHG report. If you have any questions, please feel free to email or call the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. Our contact information is located in the description box below. Thank you.